That is so bizarre. I bet, oh man, that is so weird. That is cool. What's up guys, Dennis here, and it's experiment time. I want to find out if you can bake a finish onto wood. So one of the hobbies I got into recently is carving spoons and spatulas and chopsticks and stuff. Most of these are not finished, well, in the sense that they don't have a finish on them. They're finished, they might not look it, but that's just because I'm not really great at carving. Here's one, this is one I finished with linseed oil or flaxseed oil. It's the same stuff. Usually when you get linseed oil as a wood finish, they have additives to it. And I didn't know this until recently, but you can use food grade flax oil as a finish. And it's a hardening oil, so it'll actually seep in and harden in the wood. It just takes a really long time. The kind of stuff you buy for wood finish has additives that speed up that process, that makes the oils polymerize a lot faster. If you notice, this spoon is a little bit more yellowish or orange than, say, like an unfinished spoon here. Here's one that I used walnut oil on. Walnut oil is a drying oil as well. Walnut oil is used in paints, so oil painting, that's walnut oil. And the old oil paintings, from what I understand, took a really long time to cure. They would be wet for a very long time until the oil set up. I'm really interested in using only food-safe oils because I'm going to be putting them on spoons and such. And I kind of just like the idea of using an oil or any kind of wood finish that's, you know, safe from start to finish, even in the liquid form. So what am I getting at here? Well, I found out that one of the spoon carvers I really like bakes his spoons in the oven. It gives it like this darker finish, and I started researching like what temperature and how long. There's a whole industry, it turns out, of thermally modified wood. You can get thermally modified wood for decking, for siding the house. It's wood that's been baked essentially, and the lignin and the cellulose in the wood, it undergoes some kind of change that makes it shrink down, get more dense. The sugars and the starches in the wood convert. It makes it a much more durable product and much more resistant to rot, something you can use outside. It's really fascinating. But there's no information that I could find about what I'm about to do. See, I also recently got into cast iron cookware and seasoning it, and so I was reading a lot about the different oils you can use to season cast iron, the temperatures that you cook it at. So I got to thinking, if a spoon carver can bake a spoon, and I can bake a cast iron pan with some oil on it so that oil hardens and cures onto a finish, why can't I coat the spoon, bake it together, and have a baked on oil finish on the spoon? I've looked all over. I don't know that anyone's ever tried to do this. So we're going to do it today. So let's go over the experiment. First, the equipment. This is just an old toaster oven. Stole this from the kitchen. What I did was I actually gutted it, took all the electronics out, and hardwired the heating elements to the plug. So if you were to plug this into any normal outlet, it would just kind of heat up as hot as it could go, burn out the elements eventually, probably set the house on fire. So don't just do that. But I did. And the reason I did was because I'm hooking it up to this little box over here. This is a PID controller that you can get off Amazon, eBay. Ow. It's hot. Real quick about the PID controller. P is proportional, I is integral, and D is differential. And those are three numbers that you can plug into it. You can spend days trying to set those numbers, or just use the auto-tune function. Whatever thermocouple you're using, if it comes with a tip like this, rip it off. You want, come on, focus. Ow! You want the tip of that thermocouple to just be that exposed bead of metal, like bimetal material, whatever it is at the end there. And the reason for that is because it'll have a much faster response rate. You get really screwed up if you have a big piece of metal shrouding that sensor. because it takes longer for the sensor to pick up the accurate temperature of the oven. If you want to build one of these, this isn't the video to go over it. I hope this inspires you to build something like this. Okay, so that's the equipment. And here's our experimental samples. So what I did was I cut a few different pieces of wood, and after I cut them, I kind of just carved some facets on, just because I wanted some carved surface to kind of reference, because most of the things that my goal is to heat treat in this method will be like carved projects. So I'm going to do 3 different runs. So I got 3 sets of material, and I've got 3 pieces for each run. Here I've got maple, this is pear, and this is walnut. These are just the woods that I have. So what I'm going to do is, for each wood, I'm going to treat one in walnut oil, one in flaxseed or linseed oil, and then one I'm just going to have no oil on, just to see how it reacts to the temperature, how it changes. And I'm going to do 250 degrees Fahrenheit, 325, and 400. I just am. I don't know why, but I was meaning to do this while I talked through. So I just sat there and could have been preparing all this. All right, as you can see, I'm just kind of throwing them in the oil, and then I'm going to get them pretty dry. Basically as dry as I can, just there's a thin layer of oil on it. Same way you would season a cast iron pan, which was the inspiration for this again. All right. Okay, now into the oven they go. Okay. Wow, that one is different. Ow. All right, so let's take a look. So I wrote down the temperatures. I don't know if you can see this. 250, 325, and 400, or 121 Celsius, 162 Celsius, and 204 Celsius at the highest temperature. Just for reference, here's a piece of the maple and the pear. And as we can see, got a little bit darker in the middle here, significantly darker at the highest temperature. I hope we can see it. Hold on a sec. Let me see if I can focus. Get right in here. So this was the linseed or flaxseed oil at 250. And it doesn't feel super oily, but it just kind of feels like maybe the oil, I guess it could have slightly cured, but I don't really notice that. The walnut, it's basically like if you oiled it and let it sat out. I don't really see much difference at 250. Walnut, same thing. I think probably, and you can tell just by, see the oil stains? Yeah, so it's, I don't think 250 degrees or 121 Celsius really did much. Okay, 325. When I pulled this out, I noticed the walnut here. Let me just show you. The linseed oil on the walnut, like maybe it did cure a little bit. Show you here. And maybe you can see that. So this was the bottom side and it kind of dripped down. Yeah, I can feel, it almost feels slightly like a slightly rubbery surface. Yeah, that linseed oil definitely started polymerizing. The pear doesn't feel oily. It does feel, I mean, it feels like it did something. That's just the linseed oil. Let's check out the walnut oil. Oh, interesting. The walnut oil on the walnut. I don't know if you can see, like on the bottom where it had like a little bit of a thicker layer, you can definitely see it started to coagulate kind of. Walnut oil on the maple. Really hard to tell. Walnut oil on the pear. Ah. Now that's different. That looks, it still feels oily, but it feels like a slight rubbery feeling, like silicone or like a oil finish, I suppose. And you can see, let's compare. Compare. Sorry, that's horrible. 325. It didn't really darken the wood any, which is nice. I don't really want to darken the wood. I'm just looking for a way to speed up the finish. Okay, so then let's go over to 400 degrees. So, you see anything yet? So yeah, all the wood got significantly darker. The pear looks like walnut now. Especially the one that had linseed oil on it. And something definitely happened here to the linseed because it feels kind of dry. Okay, so here is the piece of walnut that had linseed oil in it. This is, oh yeah, I don't know if you can see that. I guess that zoomed in as much as I can zoom, but it's got kind of like a gummy buildup from the linseed oil. That is so bizarre. I bet, oh man, that is so weird. I think the walnut just absorbed a little bit too much of the oil, especially the linseed anyway, and then kind of came to the surface as it was curing, and then it cured. Let's take a look at the maple. I mean, if you like that dark look, definitely worked at 400 degrees or 204 Celsius. Okay, the walnut oil, which I'm really interested in. I think it did something. Let's see. A little bit. Just a little bit. Yeah. So, I don't know if you can see here. This was walnut with walnut oil. And it has a buildup on it that tells me, oh yeah, definitely started curing here. See that? That's not the walnut, that is the oil that polymerized. And then the pear with the walnut oil darkened quite a bit. But it doesn't have quite the film that the walnut wood has. So where do I go with this? Well, because we started to see some curing at 325, and we know that 400's a little bit too hot because it started to discolor the wood, which is fine if that's what you're looking for. In 30 minutes, no waiting for the finish to dry, then 400 degrees in the oven seems to do it pretty well. I'm really looking for something that doesn't really change the color of the wood. So I think The next step is I'm going to go back to this batch, and I'm going to put this back in the oven at, say, 365. I want to say 350 because it's a nice round number. I'm going to do 360. I'm lying. I'm going to do 350 degrees for an hour with this batch because I can always turn the temperature up. So let's go in between here. Going to do another 25 degrees and do it for twice as long and see what happens with this batch. All right, let's see what these look like. But before we do, if you made it this far, you might want to consider subscribing to my channel. Click the bell if you want to be notified of new videos. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. It lets me know who likes my videos. So let's take a look. Oh. All right, let's get a closer look. Let's scooch these over. Okay, so here's the maple with the flaxseed oil. It's still warm. I've let this sit a little bit after I turned it off so I could handle them. Oh, this feels, yeah, it definitely feels like the finish is cured. I don't feel any rubbing off. The wood is significantly darker. It's interesting that with the oil on it, it darkened up quite a bit. It's got some neat grain. The walnut, let's see, the walnut, it's hard to tell. I think there's still a little bit of oil, but oh, the end grain, I can feel the end grain feels plasticky. So the walnut oil, that pretty much set up also in the wood. Let's go to the pear. So here's the pear with the flaxseed or linseed oil. This is the pear with the walnut oil. Again, I think it's set up. It feels like, yeah, and you can really tell in the end grain where it's like thicker. The film is kind of built up. Okay, so now the walnut. So here's the walnut with the linseed oil. Look at that. That is so weird. Such a thick film that built up. It's not all totally cured. There's still some oil there. If I were to like wipe off the excess, it's so weird. It's a waxy like consistency. I wonder what would happen if you burnished this with something. Hold on a second. I don't know if this is the right material. Yeah, let's try that. That is cool. That is really interesting. Look at that. Oh, I think I got some. No? Is that iron filings in there? So it's not completely. Yeah, I think there's some iron filings in there. Maybe is that what's shiny? I can't tell. Anyway, it's a really interesting. It feels like a waxy, has a waxy feel to it. Yeah, what an interesting finish. I'm not sure steel wool is the thing to use. Maybe well, a Scotch-Brite pad. I do have a Scotch-Brite pad. Yeah, here we go. That is really interesting. Huh. It would have taken so long to build up a finish this thick of oil, of any oil really, of Danish oil, or, you know, it has almost like, it doesn't feel like an oil finish, but it is. It feels almost like it has a wax over the top of it even. Huh, very interesting. So let's check out the walnut oil. Yeah, it's still pretty greasy. Let's see. But it does have some tack to it. So let's do the same thing. Well, that's weird. Look at that. So I hope you can see this, but it has some like shiny spots where the finish is thicker. You can kind of scrape it off a little bit. It really feels like it wants to buff out really nicely. Yeah, this is starting to look like, now that it's buffed out, it's starting to look way more like an in the wood finish, which is what you would expect from an oil. This is nice. I like this. This is cool. So interesting, especially the walnut. This walnut is like, look at that. That looks really nice. Oh, that's the side that was on the grating there on the wire rack. Huh, I really like this for walnut oil on walnut baked in the oven at 350 for an hour. Who would have thought? Well, me, I guess, because I'm the one that came up with the idea. Man, that's cool. I really like that a lot. That is neat. That is a neat looking finish. Okay, so here's my pear with the walnut. Let's take a close look. Again, this wasn't sanded or anything, so it's just as the surface was out of the planer. And then you can see some of the carved notches. It's darker than I'd like it. I mean, it's much darker. That still looks cool. We'll do the same thing with the pear. This really feels like it wants to buff out. Like as you start rubbing it, it starts getting more and more slippery. And it feels like it wants to take quite a... Ooh, I'm trying to... Ooh. I don't want to use a part of the rag that had oil on it because I'd kind of be cheating. That looks pretty good. Look at that. I actually kind of like that figure in there. It's kind of a cool looking little piece. I like that. I like that a lot. And that is just like food grade, like put on your salad walnut oil. Right out of the kitchen cabinet. I don't know what it tastes like. Doesn't taste like anything. I would eat from a spoon like this. Yeah. Alright, so there you have it. The maple, the walnut, and the pear. Bottom row is linseed oil or flaxseed oil. Middle row is walnut oil. And the top is no oil at all. 350 degrees Fahrenheit for an hour. And I really like the way these walnut pieces came out. Alright, so I think that'll do it for this video. I'd love to know the temperature that I could cook this at so that the wood doesn't darken quite as much as it did at 350. 325 for a half an hour, I didn't see hardly any darkening, so maybe there's a point in between there that's the sweet spot, or maybe it was just because I let it go for an hour that it started to darken. I'm really not quite sure. I'd love to hear from you guys if you've ever heard of this before. I did a lot of research and I couldn't find anyone baking the oil into the wood, which I can't imagine nobody's tried this before. It seems like such a no-brainer kind of idea, but who knows? Anyway, if you've ever heard of this before or have any knowledge of this, this is why I make these videos. I love sharing knowledge, but I also love hearing back in the comments from people that know more than I do about anything about this kind of stuff. If you try this out, definitely hit me up and let me know how it worked out for you, what kind of woods, what kind of oil, temperature, and time. All right, that's it. That's all I wanted to do for today. Hope you liked it. We'll see you guys next time.